Let's imagine a bubble filled with static. When this bubble bounces off of a wall, it doesn't pop. Instead, some of its static escapes. A single bubble is interesting, but a room full of those bubbles would be hectic. We jump to a different scene. A person is walking down the street in a big city. They are a bundle of experiences, dreams, and trauma. They are listening to a carefully curated playlist of their favorite songs from their favorite niche bands within very specific favorite genres, which plays as background noise to a monologue thought train in their brain and a subconscious that is navigating them to a subway station. When, while lost in thought, they bump into somebody and their earbuds fall out, their phone begins to play a song out loud. The person recognizes their song and compliments them on their music taste before moving on. A character is a bubble of distortion. Incoming information will pass a series of filters and understandings that they've created through their unique lived experiences, a simple sentence running over an entire string of memories like a row of speed bumps. That incoming information is distorted and manipulated, wrapped around and passed through a variety of emotions. Then, based on their personal judgment and values, a communication will pass through a separate but equally long set of outgoing filters, such as the phrases and vocabulary that they have available to them, articulation based on the audience, such as not swearing in front of children, using fancier words in a classroom, etc., in order to communicate information to another person. If things weren't so quietly in everybody's head, the world would be insanely loud all the time, just like our room full of bubbles. The distortion bubble will also interfere with other bubbles when they interact. Our characters' goals, motivations, fears, and pain will be misinterpreted or corrected based on their own perception. Plot is not a ping-pong ball being bounced back and forth or a guide wire stringing everybody along. Plot is the event horizon of all of the distortion bubbles clashing. In a game of telephone, you should find predictable outcomes for your characters based on a sentence or paragraph of information. How do they retell stories? What key moments would they find important to relay? What do the average interactions with them look like? Do they follow a script, or do they panic and wing it? The answers to those will help you anticipate their reactions. Now factor in things like ego. How do they preserve or improve their reputation? How would they push themselves towards a goal? Do they do the action even if it harms others? Or would they only do it if it uplifts others? Remember, your character doesn't have a single voice in their head that guides their every move. It's an operating system of complex filters. If you interrupt it at any point in the process, they could spill out one thing or another. That would be great for internal exposition. Think about how their values will bring different memories to the forefront of their mind. Returning to our city walker, they're about to board the subway. The compliment from earlier has brought on a different monologue now, one covering their own personal history with music, and an ex-lover who took them to their first concert, back when they considered themselves still happy. This introduction gives our reader a secret to hold that is important to our character. The reader is now entrusted with this deep emotion that exposes a complicated spiderweb of issues, questions, and memories that bonds them together. We also find out more about these people that deeply impact the story and our protagonist's internal world through the perspective lens of our main character. Now we can interrupt this process to form an inciting incident for personal growth. Maybe they see a poster that says guitar for sale, take a picture of it, and then walk home. Later on in the story, they get their first guitar, join a band, play a show, and fall in love all over again. Is the story about them getting over their ex by making music? Is it about finding happiness again, finding new love, or is it about self-actualization? What subtext is there? Was the inciting incident the person complimenting our character, or seeing the poster? Was it getting the guitar, or deciding to pursue music? When distortion bubbles interact, the plot can change direction. Plot is driven by the characters. Goals and motivations shift with interactions and events. Someone who is passive might become proactive at just the right moment. When we follow our plotline, we also see our character's growth alongside it. Pay attention to the respective changes. The beginning of those changes is the first movement in a chain reaction, and is often a very small moment that leads to greater ones. Sometimes an accumulation of events is the breaking point. An inciting incident should be an opportunity to break out of the process. Writing these moments into your story is as easy as understanding where your character currently is, where your character wants to be, and the path that you want to take to get there, the type of story that you want to tell. That creates the subtext that will change how your plot is interpreted and the type of story that you're ultimately communicating. At this point, we should also make note that our operating systems in our brain want to become the best version of itself that it can be. It will do the most to become as efficient at lifestyle as possible. It's self-correcting, it tries to get rid of any extra baggage. It also wants to solve as many of your problems as it can, doing so in the background of your day-to-day life, analyzing your new experiences for solutions to those old problems while you sleep. Meeting new people, experiencing new things, and getting new information is very helpful for changing up those filters and solving those problems. That's also the reason why therapy is so effective. You're cutting straight to the chase and giving direct solutions for those problems. You don't need to solve the problems for your character. You just need to point them down the path towards the solution for themselves to find. If your character needs to grow in a certain way to achieve the thing, you need to place those events and moments along the way for them to do so. This is why using side character deaths as a catalyst for growth feels like a hit or miss. If they die simply for growth, the plot feels shallow and feels self-serving to the main character. Instead, it should be the result of some sort of event related to their own lives or lifestyle or goals, and the interpretation of that should be the catalyst for your main character. But that's just a side note. There's also an inferred position in through this. Your reader loves gossip and drama, and will read into any situation that you give them. When our lead guitarist gets a visit from their ex backstage before a gig, and the guitarist blows up on them, we can infer that this emotion has been bubbling over in them for a long time. We can tell this because the natural filter process was interrupted by too heavy a question or an emotion, and the rant blurted out of them. Depending on the content and the context of the rant, this is a huge turning point in the character and the reader's relationship due to the confrontation. The event horizon of the two distortion bubbles inside the story is the plot. The event horizon of our reader and the main character is emotional attachment. When our gossip-loving reader hears the ex say, "Wow, you haven't changed at all," they're immediately looking to see how this information is processed in our main character's mind. Similarly, due to the reader-character bond, they want to know if they should like this character or not, depending on the guitarist's reaction. At this point, the exposition of information about the character is a deciding factor. If we want our reader to doubt their feelings towards our main character, and just how right they are for rooting for them, we've successfully pulled that off by introducing the question of our main character being the problematic one all along. Even though the reader is now distanced from the main character, they're also equally invested to see if there's any growth or revelations after this explosion. Let's step back for a minute. Our reader has a backseat to this entire affair and will never know anything past what we tell them. However, our reader is a distortion bubble themselves as well. They've also had a complex life of different events and emotions and have formed their own filters when it comes to communication. When we're thinking about dialogue and characterization, we also need to think about how people in real life are going to react to these events that we are laying out on page. We can assume the majority of events and their interpretations. Most people can relate to having a bad breakup and a weird relationship towards their ex. The reader has also been a friend to people who have gone through that sort of thing, and will relate to the process regardless. However, what happens for those niche moments, those things that are very specific to the situation? Well, in the same way that a baby will look to its parents to see if it should cry or not after hitting its head, the reader will be anticipating a tell as to how they're supposed to feel. The physical reaction or the internal monologue works very well. You can adjust the depth and cadence of the reader's emotional response according to the temperance of your character's reactions to a situation. Now, back to the story. If we pair our newfound distortion bubbles and their reactive proactive life to respective character archetypes, we begin to see a three-dimensional vision come to life. There are now people that you may encounter in your day-to-day life. You see this exact kind of person with those histories and their desires standing in line to grab coffee. Starting with an archetype or letting your characters choose their own adventure alongside the design process is up to you, but it completes a summary of who we can expect this person to be. For example, if we have a calm and collected character that doesn't have too many hobbies and has a very what you see is what you get personality. If we pair this character with a professor archetype, then we have an older, wizened character that prefers to take life slower and dig deep into their studies. If we pair the same character with a stoner archetype, then their calm demeanor becomes a mellow, foggy one. The experiences and reactions can be molded to a specific framework to complete a full caricature. When it comes to dialogue, the experiences and emotions will guide the flow of conversation, but the topics and subtext themselves draw deeply from these archetypes. In our story, we have now established a troubled history around love and music, stale anger towards somebody that hasn't been in their life for a long time, and goals to express these emotions through performance, and also to win back music for themselves. We've chosen archetypes that suit our characters and bring them to life, but we've also established and strained our reader's connection to our main character. Our dialogue and inner monologues of these characters have also placed a specific subtext so that our readers interpret exactly the story that we mean to tell. Now we need to think about the ending of our story. Understanding the merging point of plot threads at the end of a story as a climax gives the impression that there is a rising action or a boiling over point. Depending on the story, this may be true. There should also be a sense of resolution that comes from this. The pain of removing a splinter is also the relief afterwards, all built into the same action. Our guitarist and their band are performing on stage at a large local music festival. There is an emotional whirlpool of zombified feelings for their ex, writing new music, preparing for the show, and exploring a new lover. Our reader desperately wants them to come out on top and shed their old life to finally begin the new one, and they know, as well as we do, that this is a make-or-break moment. Our guitarist takes the stage. The lights go dark, and the crowd cheers. They spot both their ex and their new lover in the crowd. They take a breath and realize that they might never have gotten this far if their ex hadn't introduced them to this world in the first place. They also realize all the work that they did to get here and reflect on their journey. Record label problems, practicing with a band on too many late nights, and a lot of self-doubt. They look back at their band for support, and they see smiling faces that make them realize that they've been smiling through tears as well. They give the nod, and the song begins. The lights flare up, the crowd starts jumping, and our main character feels euphoric. Tonight is theirs and no one else's. The relief of the strains of heavy emotions and the rewards for their efforts make our reader feel equally elated as well. On this journey, all of our characters and readers have experienced the same things and have a similar outlook by the end of the book, making them feel rewarded in the payoff. Plot is not a guide wire for stumbling characters, and it isn't the ping-pong ball for your protagonist and antagonist to slap at each other. It's the point of contact when worlds collide and both share something that changes both, even if it's small. It's the 1,000 of these interactions that add up to the larger story that you want to tell.